So when I ran for governor, I had two of the following questions, and I just got it again from a listener. Mark, how do we get out of this mess? This mess, defined by at least one as the Gordian knot of entangled, tightly entangled regulations and laws and protocols that keep us from not only doing the right thing, but even extricating. If one element comes out, something's bringing it back. Whether that is a hardly ever found deep in the bowels of our many publications regulation, whether that's from a judge who feels empowered to stop an activity, it keeps us from doing activities in the first place. A town saying, oh, it's such a good idea for our town, but there's an environmental regulation, or there's a cost to even finding whether there's an environmental regulation in those 2,200 pages somewhere. By the way, those 2,200 pages that no one person read, that were cobbled together by maybe 30 kids in their 20s who, at the behest of individual legislators, want to put something in. Legislators don't even know what they've put in. Sometimes it's their staffer accommodating somebody under the guise of constituent service, and they become codified. We are locked in from massive change, but I have one solution that could actually, it's going to sound radical, but it's not. It could allow us freedom to make all good changes. Ready? We go back to the Constitution. The Constitution, at least at the federal level, doesn't permit very much governance of domestic things. Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress 18 powers. That's it. Actually, a little bit more, but in 18 clauses. These are the only powers granted by states to the federal government. Congress shall not do anything else. It is allowed to run the postal service. It is allowed to raise armies and navies. It is allowed to coin money, to establish weights and measures. This is a very small segment of our national work, and the biggest segment by far that our Congress has actually done is unconstitutional. Congress has been empowered to do very little. The executive, this is Article 2, the authority of the president and cabinet members, very little domestically as well. Their realm tends to be foreign policy. So back to domestic, there is a small number of people who they think about one more empowerment of Congress, and they point to the Commerce Clause. It is in Article 1, Section 8. And let me read it and let reasonable minds hear how perverted it has become since 1789. Congress has been given the power to, quote, regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. Now, all three, the expectation is that Congress would be an arbiter when there's a dispute among states. Who's the higher authority? Congress. Best way to end disputes, because the states, we don't want them going to war against one another with competing regulations. It's impossible for them in 1789 to have conceived commerce among the states to be commerce within states, or even commerce from one state to another that is just going on peaceably. It is instead arbitration when there's competition, in the same way that there might be arbitration with the Indian tribes, third part of that clause. There was no expectation that Congress would be regulating the transactions within a tribal reservation. Okay, they were to be uninvolved with tribal authorities. And most certainly, commerce with foreign nations. They were not going to be regulating the commerce of France and French businesses from here in Washington, D.C. In that third part of the clause, among the several states, it should be treated the same way. But for hundreds now of years, we have moved into an empowerment zone for Congress that is unwarranted. And if you go back to the Constitution, the right way is for Congress to largely butt out. There has been, by some scholars, I think they're wrong, a quote, judicially established Commerce Clause, established by one power-hungry judge, that was John Marshall, 200 years ago, with a series of decisions. He totally controlled the court at that time, unelected John Marshall, to give extraordinary power to Congress. Far better would be the 235-year-old precedent from 1789 that 73 elected, or at least appointed with popular consent, representatives, those were at the Constitutional Convention, men who didn't want power. The Constitution was set up with very sincere care for the power of individuals and against the big federal power of the states. So how would this interpretation affect some things that we do rely on our federal government for that might still be nice? Nice, but not commanded. Something like the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, that does control aspects of the radio spectrum and who's going to be able to broadcast, lest there be a cacophony that nobody can get possible signals. Well, a grant from the states to say voluntarily, you do it. 50 of us can't do it as well as one arbiter like the government. How about the FDA? Okay, there's validity there that one agency might get better knowledge than 50, and 50 states saying, you do certain things. A good model for this is the Uniform Commercial Code. The UCC is a wonderful way for commerce to be conducted throughout the world. It applies to the U.S. very well, but states are able to apply parts of it and eschew other parts. They can add to it in their own codes, and they do. So let's say it's an FDA issue that many people in a few states are saying they've overstepped their authority. They look at Rochelle Walensky, who has overridden her own board members' research at the FDA and about labeling vaccines as safe for minors. Okay? States could say, you know, we buy into FDA protocols mostly, but not here. Could states reject the entirety of the FDA authority? Yes, they could. And even less than states, towns, or even enclaves could say, in this area, our citizens don't want that authority ruling over us. In Connecticut, not even a town, a part of a town called Sandy Hook, scorched by murders, 26 kids and teachers killed in 2014. They might have an open carry prohibition. And that would allow them to set up, in this part of this town, you are not allowed to carry openly. Now, might that conflict with the Constitution itself? Probably not, because the Article or Amendment 2 right to bear arms may mean that open carry is prohibited. If it came down to it, could Sandy Hook, Connecticut secede because it didn't respect certain articles of the Constitution? Yeah, it could, and it would be done peacefully. In fact, the Constitution embraces secession. Our way out has always been the Constitution. We need it now more than ever. I'm Mark Stewart.